Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last few years, quite a few different styles, but I would say that this brewery are best known for their New England hazy IPAs and their big fruity juicy sours, the Berliner Weisses, Goses and so on. But yeah, the one we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases. And we've had some very nice examples of this particular style over the last little while, and generally speaking I would say that this is one of the Swedish breweries that you want to be keeping an eye on over the next little while. But yeah, curious to see how it turns out, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this one we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. And for this review we are going to return to DuckPond Brewing once again. So this particular beer is called the Bag Double Ipa. It comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England hazy Imperial Double IPA, whatever you want to call it, as the name suggests, and this one was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for June of 2021, and it's the first double IPA that they've released through Systembolaget since they did the Good, the Bad and the Ugly double IPAs over the last couple of months. So yeah, fingers crossed it carries on in the same vein as those. I really enjoyed those ones actually, but yeah, always cool to try some of the new stuff from DuckPond Brewing, of course. So let's crack on with this review then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from DuckPond Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about DuckPond Brewing once again. So, as I've told you before, DuckPond Brewing were previously known as Mikrofon, and this company is the brainchild of Nicholas Arsevitz, who is a singer and songwriter for the band Millencolin, which has been making music since 1993. But the band was originally based in Örebro out to the west of Stockholm, and then they took a break and Nikola moved over to Gothenburg on the west coast. But in 2013 he began home brewing with his friend Christian Silva while he was studying international marketing in Skövde. But the two were brewing very small batches on a 20-litre kit, and then Nikola went down to Berlin for a 2-week brewing course to kind of get a little bit more knowledge and things like this, which was really cool. But the two then started the company officially together, and it was based for a while in Nikola's house, and at this point they'd scaled up and were brewing 200-litre batches. But they changed their name in the summer of 2019. They went for something a little bit more anglicised because they felt that people would struggle to remember the name Mikrofon, and you know, the spelling of course would be a problem for non-Swedish speakers, I guess. But since then they've been working to increase their output and their international sales, and they've done very well with this from what I understand. But that year in 2019 they produced around 70,000 litres, and the other thing to note about these guys is that they are also one of the co-owners of the Wizard Brewing brand, along with Morgendagens, who are a very well respected sour beer brewery in Gothenburg as well. But originally these guys were doing a little bit of gypsy, kind of contract brewing if you like, so they were brewing a good number of their beers at Popels Brewery in Jonsered and then Odd Island Brewing, and they now have their own premises though in Kungston, and they've just hired Magnus Lorén as their new brewer. So exciting times ahead for these guys, I think. But as of June 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 35 different beers under the DuckPond name, and I believe before that there was about 15 or 20 different beers had previously been released under the Mikrofon name. So yeah, these guys have been fairly active over the last couple of years. Like I said, one one of the really up-and-coming Swedish breweries at the moment. They've got a really good reputation for themselves when it comes to New England hazy IPAs and the big fruity juicy sours like the Berliner Weisses and the Goses and things like this. They have done a few other styles. I've had one Imperial Stout from this brewery, if memory serves me correctly, but I hope that we see a few more different things from them over the next little while as well. But yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye on these guys, particularly if you enjoy the styles that I've just mentioned. But generally speaking, these guys are a very, very solid brewery. So have a go at some of their beers. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about DuckPond Brewing and Mikrofon, I guess, as well. For the moment, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on with this tasting session then. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork just before we open it up. As you can see, it's quite straightforward, this one. It looks like a kind of pen zigzag and things like this. Not sure exactly what the inspiration for this one is, but yeah, I'm a little bit artistically illiterate in that sense. Always more into the music and things. But yeah, nicely presented as you'll always get though. You can see on the back of the can there is the DuckPond Brewing symbol there. Tells you a little bit about the beer, and as we said, this one is an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. But I believe I paid 50 Swedish kronor for this one, which is pretty standard for a double IPA, I guess we could say, or a locally brewed one. You'll pay a few crowns more, of course, for an imported one. But yeah, 50 kroner translates to roughly €5, about £4.50 sterling, and then maybe about $5.50, $5.75 American at the current exchange rate. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. It's hopped with Eldorado, Citra and Mosaic incidentally as well, so those should be very, very nice. So let's go for it. All of those hops, of course, are American. Eldorado, I believe, is about 12% alpha acid. That usually gives you some lovely kind of tropical fruit notes, a bit of passion fruit and mango and things in there. Citra, of course, we know very, very well. Lovely big kind of juicy mango qualities and a little bit of zestiness and citrusy complexity in there. That's about 14% alpha acid. Mosaic, about 14% alpha acid as well, and it gives you a sort of lighter tangerine kind of quality to your beer. But yeah, that's it. So a nice hop bill in this one. Citra and Mosaic, of course, go together quite a lot, and Eldorado is a hop that I've been noticing is coming back a little bit in recent times. It's probably, I guess, in the flavour profile of this beer, it's probably going to be quite similar to like a Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic kind of makeup, if you like. And it never says on the beers whether it's like a 33 blend or exactly what it is, but I'm sure we'll be able to make some guesses when we have a taste of the beer. But yeah, anyway, in terms of its appearance, as you can see, it's poured pretty much as you would expect. Before the head disappears, I think it's fair to say that we got about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, it's very slightly cream tinted head, this one. I don't think it's quite perfect white, but that is fading away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer, and it's got a nice thick ring just around the edge of the glass there, but it certainly looks the part. In terms of the colour, this one's got a lovely kind of ambery lean to it. This, I would say that this one looks a little bit like a kind of more mixed tropical fruit juice, and as I've always told you, with these New England kind of hazy type IPAs, I always like comparing them to different fruit juices because that's what their appearance reminds me of. But this one looks a little bit more like a kind of peach juice or a mixed tropical fruit juice, something like this. But remember, when it comes to the colour of your beers, it's determined by one, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of the colour. The fact that this one's a little bit more ambery, I think, indicates maybe a little bit of a kind of caramel-centric malt or a brown sugary-centric malt. Could be a few things, you know, Carapils, Caramunich, Crystal, US Turo, whatever. It could be quite a few different things. But yeah, the other thing that plays a role in there beyond the type of malts that you use is the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Usually a New England IPA like this, or any kind of IPA, will undergo a boil of about 70 to 90 minutes. You can get longer boils, of course. The 120-minute IPA from Dogfish Head is a prime example, but also adjuncts and barrel aging will play a role in determining the colour of your beer as well, but they are not going to really play a role in this one. But yeah, in terms of the level of haze on this one, it's not one of the soupier and gloopier ones I think we've come across from DuckPond Brewing. It's actually got a little bit more of a kind of naturally hazy vibe to it, this one, rather than being, you know, super super soupy and gloopy, I guess. But yeah, the level of haze that you get in these beers really depends on the oat and the wheat content. The yeast will play a role as well, and that of course will vary from brewery to brewery and even from recipe to recipe that they do. But yeah, in terms of a New England hazy IPA, this one, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of appearance. It certainly looks the part. So let's take a little look at the aroma then, because it's certainly came across as very appetizing when I opened up the can. I got a little whiff of what it was all about. So let's go and take a closer look at it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that does smell very nice. If you know these hops, it is kind of, the fruity side of things is kind of what you'd expect. And the malt base, I will say, comes across as a little touch sweeter than some of the other ones we've had from DuckPond Brewing before. The other ones, I think, have been a little bit more kind of wheaty and bitey and oaty and things, whereas this one does have a little bit more of a kind of brown sugary element to it, just on first impression. But it smells great, let's just say that. So as I've told you in other reviews, I think there's 6 different directions you can take a New England IPA. They can be farmhousey and yeasty leaning, they can be sort of more grainy and rye leaning, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, and then a little bit more kind of caramelly and brown sugary leaning. And usually these beers will display a few of those kind of traits, and I think this one, for me, on the first impression, it's got a bit of the kind of crisp breadiness in there, it's got a bit of sweet caramel, and you do get a little touch of a wheaty bitiness out of it, but we'll examine it a little bit more closely. But it certainly smells damn good, actually, and that's what we've come to expect from DuckPond Brewing. These guys are one of the best breweries in Sweden in this particular style bracket at the moment. So yeah, but yeah, the aroma, that is lovely. So yeah, straight away with the malt base. When you take this one in, you can smell a bit of that soft and still slightly crisp white bready quality sitting underneath. There's a good little bit of a kind of bread crusty element in there as well, which is great. You can smell a little bit of that smoother wheaty character sitting on top of the white bread from the barley malt, but at the back of the nose you do get a little bit of that kind of wheaty bitiness out of this beer, which I think works really well. So I like that about this one, definitely. The way that the malty character in this beer comes out is very nice. Now, you can smell a little bit of oatiness out of this one, but I'd say that that's quite minimal. It does kind of take a bit of a back seat to the other things that I've mentioned already. Pardon me. I do get a very slight woodiness to this one as well, but again, that's quite minimal. But on the brown sugary side of things, it's quite interesting how this develops, because this beer to me comes across as a little bit more boozy, and maybe this is a wee bit of it could be a little bit of a kind of catch-22 or whatever, if you like, because normally when it comes to the kind of brown sugary notes, I would associate this a little bit more with the West Coast IPAs, and this one has a little bit of the kind of biscuitiness to it. It has a little bit of that kind of more biscuity, brown sugary sort of thing that you would associate with the likes of, Pliny the Elder or something like that. You can get the more oily, caramelly West Coast IPAs, but then you get the lighter, kind of breadier and biscuity ones. And the brown sugary notes that come out of this beer are a little bit more reminiscent of those brown sugary, those kind of biscuity, bready West Coast IPAs. So that's a kind of interesting thing to point out about this beer, I would say. And with that, I think you can smell a little touch of the booziness coming out of this one, but it's definitely got a bit of a straight up caramel to it, this one. It's got a McVitie's digestive biscuit kind of thing, and you do get a little touch of a kind of oaty creaminess coming out of this one as well. So yeah, the malty side of things in this is really nice, and it is a bit different compared to what we've had from DuckPond in the past. So yeah, the malty side of this one strikes me as being a little bit interesting, and I'm curious to see how that translates into the flavour. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things with the beer, I think we've said all we really need to say about the malty side of it for now, but the hoppy side of things is kind of what you would expect as well. So you get a nice little bit of a kind of light earthiness in the back of the nose. That's the mosaic, I think, that's going to give you that. But the green component for me, it's got a nice big bright floral element to it, a soft kind of grassy thing too, which I think is great, and it's quite well balanced between those two. But the more that you smell of it, the more it leans towards that kind of lighter grassy element, which I really like. So big floral aromatic character in there, like I say, but the grassiness really kind of pushes back against that a little bit later on. I wouldn't describe the grassiness as being overly zesty either. It does come across as being quite smooth in a sense, but just a little bit of brightness from the floral aromaticity. Remember, of course, with a New England IPA that it relies on late edition hops. The West Coast IPAs tend to rely a little bit more on the early edition hops. As you go through your wort boil, early edition hops are going to give you bitterness. As you go through it, you're going to get a progressive trade-off in favour of flavour and aroma, and a lot of dry hopping, of course, as well. So bear that in mind with the New England IPAs. But on the fruity side of things, it is pretty much exactly what you would expect from these hops if you know them quite well. But yeah, there's a wee touch of a pungent passion fruit to this one, but beyond that, I think you get a lot of oily mango. I do get quite a bit of mango out of this beer actually, so just a little bit of passion fruit, big oily mango otherwise, and that's a mix of both the Citra and the Eldorado that's going to give you that. But the Eldorado, I think, well actually no, the Citra can be responsible for the slightly more passion fruity note as well, so a bit more of that pungent passion fruit, big oily mango though. The aroma leans towards that, and then you've got those lighter tangerine notes from the mosaic showing their head as well in this one. It's actually quite a straight shooting beer, this one, in terms of its fruits. As I say, big oily mango for me, and a juicy tangerine orange. I don't get so much of the kind of citrusy note that you can often get from Citra, but I do get, sometimes it can give you a little bit more of a kind of gooseberry lychee type thing, and I do get a little bit of that on the tip of the nose there with this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, kind of characters that I've not come across in Citra for a little while actually, but it's interesting because when you're doing these reviews, your palate is always evolving, and you're picking up different things after having experienced other beers and things like this, so you need to bear this in mind when you're reviewing these things too. But the aroma of this beer overall, I would say, is very, very nice. So it strikes me as being, it almost comes across as a little bit of a hybrid. It seems that it's got a little bit of the malty sweetness you'd expect of like a modern take on the West Coast IPA, but it's a little bit more kind of, it has got a bit of the New Englandy side of things in there as well. So we'll see how this translates into the actual taste of the beer, but let's get the rest of it out and into the glass then. I'm very curious about this. So yes, this one is the Swag Bag Double IPA, 8% New England hazy by the looks of it, but I think it's going to have a little bit of West Coast character to it. But this one comes to you from DuckPond Brewing in Kungston in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish West Coast. Let's get stuck into this one. Take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this because it is interesting, but we're tasting this now. Slange, skull, cheers. That is nice. Straight away, this is a little bit more of a kind of brown sugary leaning New England IPA. This one, you could kind of suspected that quite heavily, obviously, from the colour of this one. But it really is. But I'm going to say straight away, this is pretty damn solid. So just, you know, well done to DuckPond Brewing. Actually, it is different. The other ones that we had before, the bad and the ugly, I never got to review the good, unfortunately, but the other ones that we had were very nice, and they were more kind of old, I guess you could say old school New England IPAs. I think it's only more recently that they've started to put a few more kind of brown sugary leaning malts in this style, but I think this one comes across really, really nicely. But yeah, it's a kind of oily, I'd say, yeah, a slightly sweeter and more oily leaning New England IPA, this one, but it gets a thumbs up from me, absolutely. So, in terms of the, the malty side of things, then we'll start where we always do with this beer. Straight away across that middle third of your palate, you can feel a nice sort of crisp, white bready sort of thing just blanket in the middle of your tongue. You do get a few elements of graininess out of the beer in that sense, but if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you'll get a few more kind of bread crusty elements coming out of the beer, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I like the kind of soft but still quite crisp white bready base that the beer has. Sitting on top of that, you start to get a little bit of a smoother white bready, wheaty kind of thing coming out of this as well. You can feel a little bit of that wheaty layer sitting in there. And that's interesting too. Then on top of that, you get a little bit of the smoothness from the oats. If you go down that middle line of your tongue within that middle third of your palate, you can feel the nice kind of thicker oaty qualities coming out of the beer, and they just spread out a little bit out towards the kind of side of your palate, which I very much like. But yeah, sitting on top of the oatiness, this is where you start to get the kind of brown sugary element out of this one. But you know, DuckPond, these guys are solid within this style. Fermentorana are the other one to keep an eye on with the New England IPAs at the moment. They're smashing them out really nicely as well. But yeah, this is just the base that these guys have for their New England IPAs is really nicely balanced. They've just got that lovely, as I say, lovely bready softness, a little touch of wheat, bit of a thicker oaty quality, and then on top of that, with this one, you're getting that nice kind of brown sugary element there. So sitting on top of the oats, it's almost like you've got a kind of oval, if you like. You've got an oval sitting on top of that oaty character there. So the base layer of the oval is a more kind of Werther's originally, kind of butter candy, butterscotchy type thing. In the dead centre of that, you've got a big, sweet, oily caramel. And as you move further out from that, it does develop a little bit of a kind of biscuity note. So I do like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, the malty character in this beer, I think, you know, it suits me down to the ground. I do like a little bit more of a kind of brown sugary leaning New England IPA. Although at the same time, if I had a few of these, I would want the, you know, I'd want something a bit more old school, like the good, the bad, and the ugly ware with the more kind of wheaty bitiness or the oaty creaminess or whatever. So yeah, I like having variety. That's me. If I have too much of one thing, I'll moan about that and then move on to something else, Joe. You've probably learned that from watching my reviews, but I think this one is nice. I've not had a kind of brown sugary leaning New England IPA in a little while, so this one is ticking the boxes for me. But yeah, it is a bit different, I think, compared to what I've had from DuckPond before. If memory serves me correctly, this is the first more brown sugary leaning one that I've had from them actually. So need to keep that in mind. But yeah, solid stuff there. I think we've described the kind of middle third of your palate on this one as much as we need to. But the flavour profile on the malty side of this one is really nicely done. But yeah, border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a nice kind of slightly, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of build up on this one there, so you can feel that, a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up there, and then you so you can feel that building up a little bit, and then you get a bit of a bread crusty quality, and then on the back third of your palate you get a little bit more of you do get a little bit of a kind of bready base there, so you can feel a soft white bready base underneath. You've got a little bit of a kind of white bready a little bit of the white bready wheaty note there, and the wheat does give you a little bit of bitiness at the very back of the palate, but sitting on top of that you get a more kind of airy, you do get a little bit more of a kind of airy yeasty quality coming out of the beer. So yeah, I really like how this goes together as well. So yeah, if you start at the back of your palate on this one, you can feel that the flavour's a little bit taller and more airy, and as you move further forward, it just condenses down a little bit. Then as you go into that middle third of your palate, you've got flavours that are a little bit more kind of squashed together in a sense, and it just goes together really nicely. So yeah, the flavour, the malty flavour does condense down a little bit as you move progressively further forward in this one. But yeah, that's the malty side of your beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things. So yeah, back corners of the palate then. Nice little bit of a smooth kind of earthiness on this one, but as you move further forward, it's got a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic side of things to it. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of earthy kind of quality. As you move further forward, it develops a bit of that kind of big floral aromatic side of things, and it does get a wee touch spicy as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, it goes together quite nicely. in that regard, I have to say. But yeah, as I was kind of picking up in the aroma, the green component of this one actually translates into the flavour quite well. So yeah, you get a nice little bit of a lighter grassy element to the beer. There's a little bit of floral aromaticity in there, but I think it's I think it really leans more towards that grassy side of things the more that you drink of this one. So yeah, nice kind of soft grassy quality to this beer actually. But yeah, the fruity side of this one I think works together. Works really nicely actually. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, let's focus on that. Front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get the fruity part of the beer, but border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again there's a little bit of a bready build up there. You get a wee bit of bread crust on top of that, and then the base of that front third of your palate is the soft white bread again, and just a little bit of that smooth kind of wheaty layer. But sitting on top of that, of course, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, and because of the kind of caramelly malt base in this one that you have, you do get a bit more oiliness out of the fruits. So yeah, the way that your hops behave and things, all of the different components of the beer are interdependent on each other. That's the thing, is it's very much a balancing act kind of when you're putting a recipe together, I would say. But this one's got a lovely big kind of oily fruity character to it for sure. But at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a more pungent passion fruity note there. Again, that's going to be both the Citra and the El Dorado that are giving you that. And then as you move further forward, it's got a big oily mango quality. And again, I think this is it's simply the Citra and the El Dorado kind of combining together to give you that. As you move towards the kind of centre of that front third of your palate, you will get a little touch more. You will get a little touch more of how would you say? You get a little touch more of a kind of slightly apricot note out of this one, but that's very minimal. It is the tropical side of this beer is all about the mango and just a little touch of a stronger passion fruit at the back. So bear that in mind with this one. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you'll get a more oily tangerine note out of this one, and that's the mosaic that's giving you that. So yeah, it's really interesting how that goes together. The thing that I'm noticing as well is that just as you move towards the kind of front tip of your palate, it's interesting because you will get a wee touch, a very slight touch of a lemony limey note, which will come from the Citra, but you're also getting a wee hint of like a gooseberry lychee kind of thing in there as well. But yeah, the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the kind of tangerine notes, and it's interesting. I've been noticing the more in beers that I've been drinking more recently, I've been feeling that the mosaic ones, that the tangerine bit is a bit more oily, if you like. And I've always found until quite recently that mosaic is a bit of a lighter hop in that sense. But I don't know, I'm just picking up these oily tangerine notes in a little bit more of an oily sense recently. They just feel a bit thicker, but your palate is constantly evolving. When you're drinking lots of different beers, your palate is going to evolve and start picking up things slightly differently. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is nice. It's big and oily, and I like that. Whether it's a West Coast IPA or a New England IPA, I do like a bit of an oily fruit, especially if there's a little bit of an orangey character in there. But yeah, this one certainly goes down a treat actually. So big thumbs up to DuckPond Brewing for this one. I think it works out very nicely. So, in terms of the mouthfeel, then I think we can round off there with the tasting side of things. In terms of the mouthfeel, it's very much a top end to mid-bodied beer. This one, the carbonation is very smooth. And overall, the mouthfeel is a little bit slick and a little bit oily. Like I said, it's a bit of a slicker, more oily New England IPA compared to what we've had before. Hoppy bitterness in this one. I think this is maybe about 40 IBUs. You know, with a double IPA, you will get a slight bit more bitterness than that standard 30 IBUs. So I think about 40 in this one, potentially a little bit more than that, potentially 50. I would say. But the malt base, nice kind of bit of crispness in there, a soft breadiness and a little bit of crispness in it as well, which I think is great. There's a nice kind of sort of smoothness to it as well, and a little bit of that oily brown sugary character, which I very much like. And then you've also got that big juicy, fruity, oily character that this beer has too. But it's another solid IPA from DuckPond Brewing. I think it's turned out really nicely. Not surprised with this brewery at this stage though. But this one with that more brown sugary element to it is a little bit different compared to what we've had in the past. So yeah, I think we can round off the review at that then. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from DuckPond Brewing, of course, as well. And if you do have any brewery or beer recommendations, those are always great. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out all my social media and things like I said, and I will catch you guys very soon. This one was the Swag Bag Double IPA, 8% ABV from DuckPond Brewing in Kingston in Gothenburg. A little bit of a West Coasty brown sugary note to it, this one, which I really like. But yeah, New England IPA this. Slàinte, Scott, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.